Okay, Jeff, thank you very much. The 7 Eyewitness News I-team has been at the forefront digging into the sex abuse crisis and how the diocese is responding here.
Our chief investigator, Charlie Specht, was at the William Boyd Law Offices last night when the Child Victims Act went into effect. Charlie, talk to us about what this has meant to the victims that you've spoken to.
This is really a day that's a half a century in the making here for them. Keep in mind that we looked at a case today, the oldest case uncovered in all these lawsuits, 1948 allegation of abuse against Father Francis Hogan, and that was in Jamestown.
Wow.
50 years in the making, go ahead, 1996, the most recent case against Father Dennis Ryder in Dunkirk. We've covered that case over the last few weeks. So this is really something that spans half a century.
And Charlie, what I think is most stunning about this is that it's not necessarily just the church that's affected here. This is schools, this is scouting, this is foster homes. And I know that there are at least 2 cases, one in East Aurora and another one expected to be filed today against the Wellsville Central School District. There are allegations of rape by a man who was employed as a janitor at the Wellsville Middle School. That's expected to come out later today at 1:30. So, I mean, this affects so many people.
There are other individual cases, but what we've seen with the pattern in the Catholic diocese here is we're talking about serial predators here who are alleged to be predators. So we have Joseph Friel, 9 cases against him just in the last few hours. He was at 14 Holy Helpers in West Seneca.
Wow.
We have James Hayes 5 times, All Saints Church on the west side. Donald Becker, we've done stories about him, got him on the phone. Three cases against him.
Now, Charlie, we know how many lawsuits have been filed so far, but as we said, we're just hours into this. This is going to be a year. Do we have any idea how many lawsuits we could be looking at here in Western New York?
We've had 3 or 4 law firms that have said they expect to each file 100 cases of child sexual abuse allegations in Western New York alone. So we're talking about potentially hundreds of cases. A real chance here the Diocese of Buffalo could go completely bankrupt.
Okay, so let's talk about that. So if we have hundreds of cases being filed, do you know how many would likely be filed against the church specifically? Give us a ballpark here. Would the majority, minority?
We've already seen 100. I would say between 300 and 400 cases. Now, if the Diocese of Buffalo goes bankrupt, that could actually mean a bad thing in a sense for survivors. They would get money out of these, but really what the survivors tell us they want is not money, but answers. What the church knew when it knew it in each of these cases.
You know, it's so interesting. The diocese actually put out kind of a 4-sheet last night after all of this came out, answering questions line by line, and you know there really are no answers to any of their questions here, but the diocese says that it's been preparing for months about the effects of the Child Victims Act, but they don't even know what's going to happen.
Well, and Charlie, you mentioned if they go bankrupt that it could be a negative thing. What happens if they do go bankrupt?
So they could potentially be forced to sell off some of their assets. We're talking churches, schools. It could be a very bad thing for the diocese and for parishioners. Already we know the diocese has been in financial straits. They have about $50 million though in their bank account. Seems like a lot of money, but it could go pretty quickly.
Well, and one of those accusers or victims rather, accusing one priest of abuse is Michael Whalen, who kind of set off this whole thing a couple of years ago at this point. And you were in the room when he filed his lawsuit against the church, and you can actually feel his pain. It's palpable in that moment. And you know, although he was excited, relatively speaking, to file this lawsuit, you can hear from the applause and you know the smirk on his face. The pain is still real, and it's it's palpable for sure.
What he said to me was, even though he can't be arrested now, the priest who abused him, admitted to it, is still alive. He can't be arrested now. He said, this is one way for me to hold him to account, to get justice.
And that's probably the most important point here.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much for joining us. Now, right now on WKBW.com, you can see the 11 additional names of priests and nuns accused of sex abuse in the diocese. Our team of reporters and overnight producers have been hard at work. We are making sure that you're able to fully understand just how wide-reaching this impact of the Child Victims Act is. Again, that information can be found right now for you. It's on WKBW.com.